But we go there, they see Mathias and they, oh my God, and we should send him to the hospital. And then, do you have a car? I'm like, no, I have a bike.
Most people don't realize, but what we get to learn day in, day out almost, because obviously doing thousands and thousands of kilometers, there will be an unlimited amount of tiny different types of problems. And a lot of the time we are not equipped to solve that problem where we are because we cannot carry all the tools and whatnot with us. And this is maybe one of the great things that we experience almost on a daily basis, this great thing how random people that we don't know that see us for the first time, they will get out of their way, to help us.
Yeah, I was thinking these days, if you want to be disappointed about the world, read the news. If you want to enjoy and love the world, go cycle around the world.
Welcome to the Seek Travel Ride podcast, where we share the stories and experiences of people who have undertaken amazing adventures by bike. Whether it's crossing state borders, mountain ranges, countries or continents, we want to share that spirit of adventuring on two wheels with our listeners.
Have you ever thought about quitting your job, loading up panniers on a bike and setting off for an adventure to see the world? Well, in 2021, my guests Arev and Mathias did exactly that, setting off from their home in Germany for an adventure to rival all adventures. Since then, they have travelled thousands of kilometres across 8 countries and are currently in Armenia. Hello, I'm your host Bella Malloy and I'm really excited to be speaking with Arev and Mathias today to learn all about their trip so far. Arev and Mathias, welcome!
Hi, thank you.
Hey, thanks for having us.
I'm really excited to be speaking with both of you. I first came across your trip and just something struck a chord, the idea of leaving life as you know it behind and setting off to experience and explore this big wide world that we have. It's probably something that would stop a lot of people in their tracks, and I'm really looking forward to explore this story of yours more. But firstly, and it's a question I ask all of my guests, can you remember the very first bike you ever owned? Arev, do you have memories of your first bike?
That I owned. So, one fact you should know about me is that I actually learned cycling when I was 21, 22 years old. And until that moment, even at that moment, I didn't own a bike. So, I was in Hungary and there was a very nice guy, Mate, and he taught me how to cycle and we did our first bike tour together. It was, very nice, but it was his bike. So when I moved to Germany, a friend of mine who had garage, for bicycles, he gave me one bicycle and it was a turquoise, very pretty bike. As I'm not a technical person, I can't tell how many gears it had or something, but it was a very beautiful bicycle and I enjoyed cycling it a lot. And that was in Hamburg 8 years ago, I guess.
Wow, and learning to ride as an adult. That is a story within itself as well, because I feel that as a child, perhaps the fears that we have in our heads aren't so overbearing. It's not that a child doesn't get upset when they fall when they learn to ride a bike, but as an adult, we can really overthink things. So I can't imagine, Arev, what that must have been like for you as a 21-year-old. Wow.
Yeah, I fell for many times, but it's good that the next moment I don't care about it and I say, oh, it's fun, I will continue cycling,
Well,
Yeah.
I think it helps that you're generally not a very fearful person, to put it in a very positive spin.
That would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, because for me, for instance, I don't know, for me, learning, I imagine learning, as you said, Bella, learning to cycle as an adult, I think I would struggle a lot with fear. I mean, I can't even remember when I started cycling. I was very small. I mean, I think it's kind of common in Germany. In elementary school, we have this cycle test where you go on this special area where they build little streets with little road signs, and then there will be an actual policeman making an exam with you, and then you get this piece of paper that says, wow, you have the bicycle license. I mean, it's not a thing really, but you still get this piece of paper, right? So I cannot remember my first bike, to be honest. Or maybe I can, I'm not sure, but it's kind of a sad story. Because if this is really the first bike, it was not my bike, it was a bike of my sister's, and it was already too small for me, and my dad tried to fix it for me, and that didn't turn out well. So yeah, then he went to buy a new bike for me. It was this amazing bike. It was too big for me. I don't know, I was maybe 7-8 years old, so I was not grown, right? But I don't know, maybe for economical reasons or whatnot, or I wanted to have a big bike, so I got this bike that was clearly too big for me. So it was standing in the garage for like 2 years where I did not use it. And then I really wanted to use it and wanted to go to the local lake and have a swim, meet up with my friends. And my dad was like, "No, you're taking my old bike. Your bike will get stolen when you go to the lake." Like, "No, it's my bike. I want to go." So I go to the lake and yeah, it was stolen. So that was my bike.
Heartbreak.
But they found it 2 years later somewhere in some border in somewhere in Europe. I didn't get it back though. But
Oh, I was going to ask, did it fit you properly by then?
yeah, it did. It was like I had an amazing first ride with my bike, but it was very sad.
Oh my goodness.
The special ride.
Yeah.
They are both so very, very unique stories. And I love that. Each of my guests has had their own story on learning to ride a bike, and none of them has been that sort of textbook what I'd expect to hear. So we're going to get into a lot about your cycle tour as the podcast goes on, but I would like to take the opportunity right now just to have our listeners get to know you both a little bit better. Could you just quickly give them an introduction to yourselves?
Well, I was born and grew up in Armenia, a very small country. So to see the big world was kind of always a dream for me because it felt too small to be in this not just small, but also a little bit isolated country because of the history and politics. So yeah, at some point after my studies, I moved to Hungary, and then I moved to Germany to continue my studies there. And yeah, I met Mathias in Germany. I started to work as a GSL teacher. And then we together decided to quit everything and start the tour. A short introduction.
Your adventure to that point as well, Arev, is unique in itself. Growing up in a small country but always wanting to see the world, and then making your way in a life through your studies to Germany via Hungary. That's an adventure in itself. Mathias, what about yourself? Can you introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure. Well, so I grew up in Germany. Well, I did so many things. It's really hard. I think I was searching for a long time, like what to do. So I tried out many different things. Eventually, I trained as a chef in a very, very fancy place. And this is around the time where I met Arev. And she was like, "Well, I like that you can cook, but maybe the working hours are not so much to my liking." And then I decided to try studying as well, again, to be honest. Yeah, and we moved to Berlin. I studied economics. I actually finished that as well. Before we started the trip, I was working for the German Green Party to try to get them elected for the last general election, which we kind of did. And yeah, and then pretty much when that job ended, it was like everything lined up perfectly. So that specific contract I had finished as well. So it was kind of for us very perfect moment to go.
This idea of seeing the world on a bike, is that something that one of you first had that idea and shared it with the other, or were you both cycling regularly together in Germany before all this? Like, how does that sort of come about?
Well, to say the truth, cycling the world, I could never imagine I will cycle the world someday because I couldn't cycle at first place. So I really wanted to see the world, but I wouldn't think of cycling. And when I learned cycling, I enjoyed it a lot, and I wanted to travel the world. And I always told Mathias, I want to go to Asia, let's do this. But then we had only these 2-3 weeks holidays. Yeah, so we always had these 2-3 weeks holidays, and Mathias' green consciousness was not allowing us to fly very long distance, well, very far with plane.
For just 2 weeks,
for just 2 weeks, yeah. And then he came with the idea.
So I don't even know how the idea really came to me, to be honest. I mean, obviously we get asked that a lot, so I thought about it, but I can absolutely not say what was the spark. Obviously, I also wanted to see the world from when I was young, and obviously there was much easier for me with a German passport living in Europe where there's no real borders, at least to how I remember most of my childhood. I remember though that an old friend from school, he told me that he had cycled from Germany to Nepal. So that must have been in the back of my mind. And then at the beginning, actually, I think it was slightly before. Yes, it was before the pandemic started. Like in that winter before the pandemic, I had the feeling I knew I would finish my studies rather soonish. And at the same time, I couldn't see myself working in any kind of job that economists would generally do. So I think I was trying to look for an escape in a way. And yeah, traveling around the world with a bicycle on a very low budget for an extended time seemed like a brilliant idea to me at the time. So I suggested it to Arev, and you were quite shocked in the beginning because at that point in time, our plans for the future they looked quite different from that. Took you a little.
Yeah, well, I could imagine, well, to realize that you are going to do this for 1-2 years, that's a long time. And at the one moment I was like, okay, my life is here, it's going on. Yeah, I have some plans. It means you just interrupt everything and then you do something else and you're not even there. So yeah, to cope with this idea took me some time. But then in the end, I liked it because I would travel, I would see the world, and I would, maybe gain this experience, get the feelings. What was my main goal? So then I said, okay, why not? I enjoy cycling, so.
Were you, before Mathias, you suggested this type of trip, adventure, and I guess something that would be a main part of your life? And I say that in that when you reflect back on it, the memories you will have from this trip will most likely impact you and inform how you live your life going forward. Or at least that's in my imagination. But were you both doing even, were you taking even sort of extended trips on a bike at that stage? Had you done any type of cycle touring?
No.
I was cycling to work and back.
Sometimes. Most of the time you would take the bus or the metro underground. I mean...
No.
You did not do, like, when we started talking about it, you started cycling much more. But actually, until that time, I would say in 99.9% of the cases, you would take the underground and the bus to work. And to be fair, I mean, we lived in Berlin, central Berlin at the time. I mean, you said earlier, like, how terrifying learning to cycle as an adult could be. But you cannot imagine how terrifying it was for me at the time cycling through the city with Arev, or even just knowing that she cycles through the city, because she had never partaken in traffic, really, like driving license. She was always like using public transport.
Exactly. I also couldn't drive a car. I never wanted to learn to drive a car because that was boring for me when I was younger. And I still think that it's nothing for me. But yeah, so if you can't drive and if you don't cycle a lot, then the traffic is a different thing for you. Yeah, I do have a different perspective. I don't care about what the cars do. So
Wow.
Like, I mean, imagine a blindfolded child on a tricycle that just goes through the really busy city and you're like, see your child, like this is kind of how I felt most of the time.
But Arev, that child's not just going to bounce if it hits a car.
Yes, but I couldn't do that. She's a grown woman.
So I know that you both took a tour. You both cycled to, I think, the length of Germany.
Yes.
Had you at that stage made the decision about going around, maybe we'll go around the world? Like, was your trip initially in Germany a sort of test, or was it separate?
Well, we did that as a test because before that tour, we already had the idea of traveling the world. And so the idea didn't come after the tour, but the tour came after the idea. And yeah, it was kind of a test for us to see if we can do this for longer than 2 days. And yeah, what shall we actually do? How do you cycle for many days? How does a trip like this look like? And what are the routines? What do you have to do on daily basis? It's not just cycling, right? It's pitching the tent, it's finding the food, it's, a lot of basic things that you do during one day. And at that point, we didn't know what that actually means. So that was a kind of test tour, yeah.
And actually, I mean, I'm kind of glad that it turned out that way. Actually, we had intended to start cycling earlier. We wanted, like, in that year, 2021. We did that Germany test in the summer, but actually we had initially intended to start our world tour in May that year. But because of life and stuff, that did not work out. And to be honest, I was really anxious and uncomfortable with the feeling to like give up everything, like the rental of our flat, like all our stuff and job opportunities and so on, without having done a tour that lasted longer than a weekend, because that's what we did the year before. Like we had this initial idea. So we bought a used bicycle for the both of us and did our first weekend and day trips around Berlin. So that had been our experience. And then in 2021, when the date where we should really go on the big one was coming closer, but we are really not getting into the preparation as much. We were like, okay, we have to do something. There's a summer time in the summer where we can make a little trip. So let's cycle through Germany and visit our friends and relatives in the meantime as well. So it was kind of a lot of things together. Like it was saying goodbye, because in our hearts, we kind of knew that we really want to go, but it was also to get some reassurance that we're not going to quit after like 2 weeks into the trip.
Is it a reassurance that we will not quit?
No, it's not, but it was designed. It was kind of, the idea was to get some peace of mind, I would say.
Yeah, because, to get used to the technicalities, maybe the routines, better to say, like how this works at all. But it's not a reassurance that you can do the world tour, because it's so not predictable what will happen every day once you start the world tour. You can have to...
It's life happening that makes you make a turn that you really don't want to make, but you have to. And that happened to us also since we started. So you cannot... I mean, I'm a German. I really like to prepare, but it's like we realized pretty early that even if you try your very best, it's just nothing you can really prepare for.
I've said it to a few of my previous guests on the show as well, but I full-heartedly believe that when you take on a long-distance cycle tour, you may not realize it at the time, but you've just signed up for a big course in problem solving. Because
Yes.
It is. And somehow you always solve the problems. They cause you anxiety and stress at the time and concern. And some of them are more trivial than others, of course. But yeah, it is. It's life on a bike is totally different. And the problems that you're solving there, as you said, you're getting into a routine. So you're wild camping on your tour, which means, you have a problem to solve every day if you're not in a warm shower as host of where are we sleeping tonight? Where is this safe? Where am I getting food? But if your bike breaks, how am I going to fix that? What do I need to know about fixing with bikes? What equipment do I need? There's so many things. So I think when you were saying there, Mathias, you felt you needed this trip through Germany to prove that you had the skills to be able to go further. I can understand the logic there, and I think to me, that's a logical way to look at this trip as a test case for the big trip. What did you learn about cycling through Germany that would help you then for your bigger trip? Having only cycled for a few days beforehand, were there unexpected things, or was it as you expected?
I think we did not have that much of an expectation, to be honest. I would say probably the most important thing that we learned on that Germany crossing was that we really want to do it, and despite of all the problems we had, because we had a lot of problems. It was our first big trip. We were wildly out of shape when we started it. We did way too much kilometers, especially in the first day, but actually especially in the first week for our condition and shape. So, and then I can't even I set her saddle too high, so her hamstrings would get inflamed, which is really painful, I guess. So.
It was.
But yeah, I mean, kind of, there was a lot of problems. I have this thing with my, how are they called, like my ankles, like there's something in here and I get inflammation here.
Oh, your wrist?
Yeah, my wrist.
Yeah,
my wrists like to inflammate because I worked so much on a computer in my life. And so without any training to sit on the bike all day long, that was like really painful for our bodies. I mean, you've done a fair share of touring and I think most people would say, and we say this by now also, like the first 2 weeks are kind of
painful,
especially the first week, but maybe so like after 2 weeks you start to realize, okay, my body is adapting and stuff. So it's like really that time cycling through Germany is like the tough phase we had. First big trip, like for you, I think like first time really camping outside and it was hard, but we pulled through.
I think all in all, you know what's good about these journeys is that at the end of the day, you forget the pain and you just remember these beautiful moments, the beautiful interactions. Oh, you remember this person I saw there? He was so nice, or, you know, she was so helpful, and oh, this tree was beautiful, or this view was amazing. Yeah. So you remember all this. You have all these memories of your day or of your trip, and then, yeah, the pain is gone as long as it's not a big accident or I don't know, yeah, you know, something really bad, but then it's gone and the tiredness is gone, the back pain is gone, the butt pain is gone.
And there's only the amazing memory left.
Yeah, you're not really concentrated on that, oh, how hard is this whole thing, but oh, this is so nice, so cool, oh, you know. And then all the stories you just have on the road, you know, that changes everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like just what's happening all the time. Like I think to me, like the first beautiful thing that happened for me, I mean, it's so banal. It's like really, it's nothing special. But when we were cycling out of Hamburg, crossing the Elbe River on the big bridge, there was a cyclist on his daily commute or whatever coming from the front, and he saw us with a fully packed bicycles and he understood what we were doing and he was really excited and was like waving at us and like, oh, have a nice trip, enjoy. So this was just like a heartwarming moment, and this is all the stuff, I mean, stuff like this happens all the time. The people you meet, like, I mean, we met the craziest people even in Germany. You wouldn't even imagine. Like, I think by now we could write a book about just the people and the stories we learned just in Germany. And this is, I think, what, despite the problems, made us realize, okay, we have to cycle around the world.
Mathias and Arev, the more I speak to people who've undertaken trips like you have both done, the more I realise that it's not so much the story, it isn't so much about the bicycle, it's those human interactions that really shine far. And Mathias, to your point when you said it was just, you know, might not seem like anything to anyone else, but that first person on that bridge in Germany that's excited because you're going on a big trip. I had a very similar experience myself when my husband and I were actually moving countries from Ireland to France. There was a cyclist in Ireland who saw us. We were all loaded up our bikes for this tour. We were heading to the ferry port, and it was the excitement that they had for us. Seeing that was something I still genuinely remember. It's really impactful, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, feels great every single time someone is waving at us, or like, even if it's the annoying kind, you know, like I think it was in Sicily or where? No, in Turkey. In Turkey, like, it's very interesting what we learned so far, that people in their cars honking, they do it for very different reasons. Well, in Turkey, you get greeted so much on the road. Like, it would feel really like after, I mean, Turkey is a big country, right? So you cycle there for quite a while. So you really get into this vibe. And if someone would not greet us, I mean, it's ridiculous, but if someone would not greet us in Turkey, we would like, how strange is this person didn't greet us, you know? It's not that we feel, you know, like that people should greet us, but I mean, you get so used
to it, yeah.
Well, I could only imagine. So you did that sort of test tour in Germany, and it gave you the reassurance that you could continue and actually follow this amazing idea that you'd both thought of cycling to see the world. I'm interested to know, what were your family and friends thinking of this idea?
Our friends, well, most of our friends wouldn't take us seriously in the beginning. They were like, no, right? You're joking, right? And then when they would realize this is very serious, they're like, are you crazy? How can you do this? Or the others were, they were so excited for us. Oh, that's a great idea. I would love to do that as well. So very different reactions.
Yeah, I would say actually also like our friends fell in those categories. Like either they were kind of excited, but still saying, well, that's great for you, but not for me. Or they were like, in disbelief for a very long time and could just not imagine anyone to do that really.
And waiting until the last moment that we will just, end everything and say, no, okay, we're just staying here and,
Yeah, and I think it was also very interesting because I had the feeling that for some people that thought did not, work well with them. So maybe it was not the closest friends, but I had the feeling that some people, when they realized that we kind of mean it, that they kind of disconnected a little bit in a way. And I would imagine, I did not talk to them, so it's an assumption, but I would imagine because of the people that it happened with, I would imagine that's kind of because they did not approve of our choice of way of life.
A little bit unresponsible, maybe? Or...
Yeah. Like it was like the very straightforward, very responsible people who I had the issue with personally. So I would think it's just something like for them is so widely out of their, how they imagine a life being lived, that's not for them. So, yeah. And with family?
I remember when I told my dad, he was very excited and said, wow, you should write a book. Yeah.
You should.
Yeah, that was his first reaction. And then he was, you are going to undertake a very serious journey. You need to think and plan. That's a big deal. That was his reaction, Yeah, I think then maybe he didn't share a lot, but he thought a lot about our trip. And
I think it was like the difference between your dad and my parents was like your dad was very enthusiastic about it in the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then when he started thinking about it over the months that it took us to get started, I think his worries started to add up.
Right, yeah.
So I think he was really worried when we actually hit the road. And with my parents, it was really difficult for them. And I think, now since we told them and now I think it's almost 3 years now. Almost, at least over 2 years now, for sure. I'm still not sure if my dad, I think he still has a lot of issues with it because of safety concerns. Not only like personal immediate safety, but also like long-term economical safety because career,
future
stuff, and so on. And my mom reacted positively in the first 10 minutes. And then she was really heartbroken for a couple of months. Like she took it really hard and it was really, really difficult for her. But now she absolutely understands why we do this and she's very enthusiastic about it. But it took her a long time to get to that point. Yes.
Yeah. But then again, every time we talk to her, and when are you coming back? When do you want to come back?
When are you going to settle down? When do I get grandchildren?
Oh, the family guilt trip comes out. I guess to be fair to your family and even your friends, like such a starkly different thing that people our age decide to do. And so it has to take a while for them to process that. And it's interesting, like there were two camps that you were talking about with your friends. Some were like, wow, that's amazing. And some were like, oh no, I'm happy, but I'm sad because you're going. And some were disapproving. It's quite interesting that was really stark about that. It must have been hard for you both to navigate through that before setting off as well. But you did set off. You had your trip through Germany. And you set off in, I think it was late autumn in 2021, wasn't it?
Yes.
I must say, as an Australian, I really have an understanding and appreciation of what you're facing travelling at that time of the year, especially in France, because the autumns, especially in November, very wet and very cold. If you ever really wanted to test your resolve, that was always going to be a great time to see how strong and full of grit you would be. So what was that first while on the road with that challenging weather like?
Well, first off, I wouldn't give us the credit in thinking this all the way through with the weather. But yeah, well, it was challenging.
Well, like, what's challenging? Challenging was to dry our stuff. It was raining almost every day in the first 2 weeks, so the tent was wet, our socks were wet, and shoes were wet. So this little time of sunshine during the day was the time where we put everything out. Oh, dry! We would dry our stuff.
I think it was hard in a way because like our only experience in a longer tour had been a couple of months earlier in July, August, when it was very hot, like the kind of maybe not the perfect time of the year, but it's like very easy time of the year to do this. You can pack pretty light because you don't need the warm clothing. So in general, our bikes were much lighter. The days are very long, so you're very flexible during any individual day. Like I'm not feeling like I need to rest right now. You can rest for hours and then cycle in the evening or what. So
yeah, but then winter days are short. So around 4 o'clock, we had to search for camping spots because it would get dark and it's difficult in the darkness.
I guess, like you were saying there, it's a different level of comfort cycling in, say, June in Europe to cycling in November. And the daylight hours is a really valid one because obviously when you're cycling, it's not that you want to cover large distances, but it's easier to cover the distance that you had wanted to cover for that day when there's a lot of daylight to do it. You can take a longer break at lunch. You can enjoy the shade under a tree or a beautiful view by a river. When there's so limited hours of sunshine in that time of the year, it really makes things a bit more complex. And just the thought of not being able to dry your tent out properly, that feeling of being cold and wet and damp, because it would be cold when you stop as well.
Oh yeah, it would get really cold. I think, yeah, that was an issue, I remember. But I think what was from the coldness, I think was like in the morning or in the evening, like after a day of cycling, you're tired, you did sweat still, and then you sit in front of the tent and it's cold and humid and you're preparing your dinner because you have to eat. You cycled all day. Like we've never felt as hungry as in this time, but you have to cook, so we can't cook. Like our tent is not so big. We have to sit outside in the cold to cook. So yeah, that was physically difficult.
But that was still okay until when you are already in the tent and then suddenly you want to wee.
That's terrible when you're in your sleeping bag and then you realize you have to get out.
Oh, and go to the toilet. That's the worst.
Yeah. And then in the morning when you get out of the tent and it's super cold, your fingers are frozen, the water is super cold, you don't want to drink it. And yeah, I always needed 20, 30 minutes of cycling until my body gets warm again. And
for me, when I'm camping, I need a coffee to prize me out to be brave enough to face the world if it's like that. Do you drink coffee or tea, or was there anything like that would help motivate you as a morning ritual in the morning when you're camping?
Tea, we would drink tea.
Yeah, we would make a lot of hot tea. We did not carry coffee so far. Well, in Turkey, we got into the habit of getting this little one-use instant coffee because they would sell it everywhere. But we never felt like carrying bigger chunk of coffee. Yeah, but tea, a lot of tea. So I think in retrospect, we started cycling at that time in very late October because it was the earliest time we could go. If we could have, we would definitely start it earlier. We did not really think that it would rain so much. And to be really honest, for the most part, when I think back, it's just now that we started editing our videos and get to look on all the footage and read Arev's diary that she writes in her tent late in the evening when I'm already sleeping, that we realize how much rain we had and how difficult this period, like the first 2 weeks especially, have been in November in France. But I think it was, the weather, the wet and the cold, it upped the difficulty level for sure. But I think it was like the challenge was mostly mental, where we had our biggest problems because, yes, it was physically challenging, but also it was a very different situation for us than it had been in the summer. Like in the summer, even though we felt the stakes had been high because we had to prove to ourselves and maybe even our friends and family that we can do this, now we're really out there And if like we kind of did not allow ourselves, or we didn't speak about it, I think, but at least me, I had in mind, like it has to work now. Like we sold all of our stuff. We quit our jobs. We gave up the rental of our amazing apartment. Like we cannot go back now. And I think there was this insane
full commitment.
Yeah, I think there was this very high mental pressure that it has to work no matter what. And then on top of it, obviously there's this, we set out to do this filming and documenting all of the journey, and we are not filmmakers. Like we had literally no idea how and what to film, and that came even on top of it. So yeah, if I remember back in France, it was like, yes, it was rainy, but it was especially the time where we had our by far hardest fights in our whole relationship. I remember more than one occasion where we would cycle through amazing, like heartbreakingly beautiful autumn countryside in France, like where all the forests had all the colors, you know. It's beautiful, and it was hunting season, and so there were hunters all over the place, and you would hear the puff, puff, puff sometimes. And we wouldn't care. We would scream at each other at the top of our lungs, because we're having a fight about something we couldn't even remember how it started. And like, we don't know what we were arguing about, but we had this so much emotional, insanely incredible, intense fights where we would scream. And I remember this one time when we, in the fight, like we were screaming, and I see like just next to the little country road or what it was, this hunter with his rifle, and he's looking at us like in shock. What's going on here? So yeah, this is what I remember France the first 2 weeks. Yeah.
It's interesting when you talk about hunting season, because when I was watching your videos there, obviously I live in France now, so I had a real appreciation of that type of autumn weather. But I was also thinking, wow, you're wild camping. But you're wild camping in hunting season. And if it's anything I've learned as a bike rider in hunting season, is you sort of want to be really visible, because hunting season doesn't really exist in Australia. And so the idea that it exists on the level it does here in France was really foreign to me. And you're right, like it's not uncommon to see people out with guns and to hear gunfire going around you. Did you ever have concerns when you were wild camping?
I mean, we thought about it, well, at least I thought about it, but it was not that we would set our tent up. I can't remember that we would have, like at the Son River one time.
So that was one of our disagreement topics, me and Mathias. We saw the wild camping differently. He was a little bit afraid in the beginning, so he would like to put the tent somewhere no one would see. Like, no one even would see that we go to that place, so no one knows where we are, which was completely mad and strange for me, because, yeah, why not? I know, it's, I would say, no, we could, we should talk to people, and we should be visible, and we should, So I had different approach, and for me, to be somewhere where no one knows I'm there is scarier than if someone knows where I am, And so we had also a lot of fights about this. And there was this one point where we had this most beautiful camping spot, and like his fear kind of transferred to me. And I was so afraid that night, which made me so angry because I would never be afraid. But then I felt this fear. And that was the first time I said, okay, I'm taking the knife with me in the tent.
Oh, wow.
Because, for a person who knows this feeling of being afraid, of being conscious, and it's different. But for me, it was so new. I couldn't sleep the whole night, actually. I was there and I was like, why am I feeling this? What do I fear? It was such a strange feeling. And I was so angry on Mathias that he gave me that feeling.
I can resonate with that fear, having wild camped and not slept a wink because I was scared. So I know what that fear is like. But I think, navigating through those extra complexities of, like you were saying, it's the first miserable weather. You're still working out how to film and document what you're doing. You have that sort of, maybe you've just left the certainty of life as you knew it in Germany, and you're navigating this new dream and having to work through the different ways that both of your perspectives were on certain things. Like, it's an extra It's that problem solving that you didn't realise you were signing up for at the start coming out.
Oh, yeah.
But credit to you, you're both still together now, so you got through it, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because we kind of knew, you kind of when we started thinking about it, we kind of knew this will be the biggest challenge of our lifetime, at least so far, for sure. I mean, obviously, I guess it's maybe different when you get children or something, but for us in our lifetime so far, that was clear to us that we've never done something as difficult, and that we'll have to learn so much new stuff every day. Even if you look, you watched, I think you watched probably most of our videos. There's this one thing where we kind of our motivation, where we a year before the start, we put that together, our thoughts about why we want to go. And we totally knew it from logic, but obviously you don't know how it really feels, how it really is when you're out there. And I think we were pretty much overwhelmed in the beginning from the intensity.
There's an English saying you're drinking from the fire hose, learning from, you're overwhelmed with everything. And I could imagine that's what it was like on those early days. But you did make it through France.
Yeah.
And travelled on through, I've got France, Monaco, Italy, Greece, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia. It's such a long, amazing trip in itself. But there's so many questions that I have, and I'm hoping to get through all of them. But the first ones are, we were talking about problem solving, but unexpected things happen on a tour as well. Can you tell me about a time where something unexpected happened in a country where you really, really forced you to think long and hard about how you were going to go forward?
The first biggest problem, I think, was when Mathias got sick in Greece. So we arrive in Greece and we cycle a bit. And then at some point, Mathias has this diarrhea for 4 days. We rent an apartment and stay there and try. We think it will pass, and then it doesn't. So we go to a hospital. I can't read Greek. I can't speak Greek. I can't understand it. And we take a taxi to this hospital, and we are on Peloponnese.
Yeah. But it turned out it was not a hospital. It was just a medical station or something.
A medical center, and this medical center is on the hill. So we had to take a taxi. The taxi brings us there. And I don't have anything because I thought at that moment it was a hospital. So we are going there and they will give Mathias some medicine and we'll just come back to our apartment. But we go there, they see Mathias and they, oh my God, and we should send him to the hospital. And then, do you have a car? I'm like, no, I have a bike. And then, they call the ambulance and this ambulance takes us, so I'm going with him, 30 kilometers away to the other city. And we go there and we are at the hospital. They do 10 times COVID test to make sure it's not COVID. And they put him into a room and they say, okay, he has to stay here.
They put a lot of holes in me. Yeah. A lot of holes. I got 3 infusions at the same time. It was crazy.
Wow.
So he is in this hospital and now, everything is settled. Okay, he stays there. But then I see, okay, I have nothing with me. I don't know where I am. Our apartment is 30 kilometers away from here. What am I doing? What am I gonna do? And so I say, Mathias, okay, because he's sick and I'm so sorry. And then I'm, okay, you stay here. I'm going home and I'll come tomorrow. And then I leave the hospital, stand there, literally, and think, okay, how can I go home? I don't know. Is there a bus? Is there a train? Should I, and taxi is expensive, so I wouldn't, think of doing that in the first place. And then I ask people, okay, how can I go from this, the city was Egio, and I need to go to Akrata. How can I go there? And then, there is the bus. And okay. So I try to Google it, and I find a train station, and put it on Google, and I say, okay, I'm going to walk there. It's just 30 minutes, and then the train is leaving at 6 o'clock. So I'm going to make it. I'm walking there. It's getting dark, and I end up on the wrong side of the train station. I see how my train goes, and I didn't take it.
No.
And it's already dark. I look around. There are just trees, just lemon trees, olive trees. I see nothing. I don't see any entrance to the train station because it's on the other side. So
would have been a nice place to pitch a tent, Arev.
Yeah. And my battery dies from my phone. So at that moment, I was like, okay, if I die here, no one will find me. So now I imagine, I look around and I say, okay, how can I get to the train station? And I see there is a bridge over the train. Okay, I say maybe I should cross that bridge and then the entrance is on the other side. So I have to go through this, huge garden or forest of the trees of olive and lemon trees. And at some point I start to run because I was afraid, I don't know. But I'm already running to get to the light, to the street. And once I get there, there is no soul, but like 5 or 6 huge street dogs.
Oh my goodness. That's like my nightmare.
Yeah, and I stand there. I'm like, okay, what am I gonna do? If these dogs kill me, no one is gonna find me, This is the only idea I have all the time. If I die here, no one is gonna find me. I continue. I say, okay, now I'm going just to walk quietly. I'm not afraid of the dogs. And they were barking, obviously. So I started to shout back and, calm down and I'm strong. And I crossed that bridge and there were more and more dogs like this, the other one and the other one and the other one. And I go the other side and I don't see how I can get to that train station because it was dark. You see it's forest and darkness. You don't know how you can get there. And there I saw a light, a house. I knocked at the door and there was a woman. I don't speak Greek, so I was like, just, hello, train station, I need to get there. How can I get there? And somehow she understood I need train to Akrata. And this woman just, put on her coat and accompanied me to the train station. And that was, so amazing. I was like, oh my God, thank you. I hugged her so many times and said, she saved my life for that moment because I thought I will never get to that train station. And yeah, that was very interesting. Very interesting story for me that even though I didn't know the language, I was in this miserable situation and there was a person who just came and helped me, even though we couldn't understand each other.
Because Arev and Mathias, on a trip where you're not just crossing countries, that you're also crossing cultures, the language barrier is from one place to the next. I can only imagine. But the kindness of strangers, like you expressed for that day there, I imagine it's something that you experienced on many occasions through your trip.
All the time.
All the time. But, this was something special because it was for the first time that we were separated and he was sick and I was there alone. And these people just helped me to go through with it because when I went back to the apartment, that I finally made it to the apartment, I almost wanted to cry. And then the neighbors came, they prepared meal for me and came and gave it to me and said, whatever you need, tell us if you need help. And I almost cried at that moment because for the first time I felt so alone. And that's actually magical because then the strangers are not strangers at all. They are the closest person at that moment.
And you don't feel like you've got this big problem that you have to solve on your own.
I think it is something what many people in the beginning, when we talked about this with our friends and family and so on, this is what people are afraid of, that like moments like this, that they are somewhere in a country and they can't even speak the language and don't understand how things work there. And then they imagine, this will be terrible, right? But what most people don't realize, but what we get to learn day in, day out almost, because obviously doing thousands and thousands of kilometers, there will be an unlimited amount of tiny different types of problems. And a lot of the time we are not equipped to solve that problem where we are because we cannot carry all the tools and whatnot with us. And this is maybe one of the great things that we experience almost on a daily basis, this great thing how random people that we don't know that see us for the first time, they will get out of their way to help us. Obviously we would do that as well, but
I have the feeling we always got the help whenever we needed it. You know, there was always a person.
Yeah, and I mean, they appear like out of nowhere. Like, I mean, we had so many occasions. Like, I remember on 1st January in South Italy, it was my birthday, and we were in a very, I don't know, the area, there was nothing really much. It was an agricultural area, but it was the 1st of January in South Italy, so there was nobody, like no cars, nothing. And we had spent the night before in this olive garden of this Calabrian big family where all the people, like, we had been looking for a place to put the tent, but for some reason everything was like super soaked. We looked for like 2 hours. Arev, I think you especially were kind of desperate to find a nice spot because it was like my birthday is on the 1st, so like, and 31st is like kind of like, okay, it's New Year, but also Mathias' birthday, right? And we couldn't find a place, so we started asking people in properties, and I was already like, oh no, it's not gonna work out. And then she's like, no, I will ask them too. Then it turned out to be this huge Calabrian family, like from little child to the granddads and moms, and it was crazy. Like, they were eating and drinking and then later shooting a gun at midnight and stuff like this. And they were like, I mean, they didn't speak English, but they were like, well,
real
you can
celebration.
stay here. And then they left in the middle of the night. Okay, just tomorrow when you go, just close the gate, will you? And so we start cycling on the 1st January after this funny night where we had been invited to spend New Year's with a complete random stranger's family. You know, like, they fed us, they gave us a roof where we could put our tent under. So this was great. And then we cycle, and I realized that my front brake is just braking pretty much all the time. I could not figure it out, and we're in the middle of nowhere. I don't even have the skill, like, to understand what's wrong with my brake. I just realized it's braking constantly. So we stand there on the road, nothing happens, no car for like 10 minutes, and then suddenly out of nowhere is this road cyclist. And he stops and it's like, oh, is there a problem? I mean, even not in English, obviously, right? Like, he's speaking Italian, we speaking English, but he's like, problem, point on the brake. So, and this is road cyclist. I mean, I think you do also road cycling, right? So he has, like, it looks like he has nothing, you know, like, it's just him in his sleek shirt on this tiny fragile bike, and he gets down to the bike and grabs into his into the tiny pocket in the back of his shirt where he has his multi-tool and starts to disassembling our brake. And after like 10 minutes, it was working again. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Again, help where you least expect it.
Yeah. Many stories like this, actually.
Yeah. I bet you I could fill hours full of stories like this. And it fills me with joy for humanity, actually. You do realise, like, through your experience with the travel and the vulnerability of travelling in the way that you do, you realise that inherently people want you to be happy, want you to be safe, want to help you. In your time of need, as you said, Arev, you always had somebody there.
Yeah, I was thinking these days, if you want to be disappointed about the world, read the news. If you want to enjoy and love the world, go cycle around the world.
Oh, wow. So many countries you've travelled through and you're crossing cultures. What has taken you by surprise in a good way? And I'm not talking about the kindness of strangers. What are the unexpected sights that you came across that you didn't know existed until you cycled and saw them with your own 2 eyes?
The unexpected.
Take your time, because this is a hard question.
That we didn't know it existed.
I have a really silly one.
Oh, go for it.
It was also in France, sorry. But I mean, it was the first country for us after Germany.
That's okay.
You know? And I was struck in the beginning because, I mean, when you cycle, you know that like you do every meter, you know, like it's a very gradual thing. You have constant change, but it's very, very gradual. Like, I mean, if you travel like many people do with a train or the plane, like you get in there and then you get out in a completely different place, right?
Yeah.
It's not like this with the cycling, obviously. And so when we entered France, and it's maybe a very special thing because the bordering region between France and Alsace, like it's on the east France, it's close to Germany, and it used to be like they made wars like 200 years or 300 years, like every couple of years that would change hands. And so it's very mixed culturally. Like they speak their accent as kind of like they are able to understand me as a German and I can understand them a tiny little bit.
Yeah, this is in the Alsace region.
Yes. So, and obviously then the architecture and obviously the landscape is pretty much the same how I grew up, but obviously also the architecture is the same because they have the same building materials and they even used to be in the same country for some time, So I was struck that it's so similar. And I remember saying to Arev, well, if you would change the names, like all the signs with the names, and would tell me I'm in Germany, I would totally believe we were in Germany, right? So that was something what was striking to me.
What about you, Arev? And actually, let's talk about places of natural beauty this time. What did you see that just totally went, wow, this is the most amazing sight?
Well, I remembered many places, but I will start with Italy. There was Scala dei Turci. This was the first time I saw it. Okay, this was not the first time I saw it. I saw it in a movie. I didn't know it was there. So when I went there and I remember that movie, I was so excited to be at that place and see it. And the view is just amazing. And the sunsets and sunrises are magical. Yeah, so we stayed there for 2 nights and we enjoyed this place. And that was this one place. I didn't know it was there. And yeah, it was amazing. The other one that impressed us a lot was in Turkey, in Cappadocia. I think Selime and Cappadocia, these 2 cave towns, and especially in Göreme with the balloons. Yeah, I think that was something that we will never forget. In the morning we woke up and this was this magical place, with these caves. It's already surreal. But then you also have these balloons in the air. And yeah, that was an incredible moment. And then the third place in Armenia, in my home country, we discovered a canyon. I never knew, I didn't know about it. And however, we found this amazing canyon with the river and 2 piggies playing there. And that was also very beautiful. And especially in my home country, I'm always, it's very pleasing when you find some new place and yeah.
Actually, to think, Arev, that you had to go on a tour of the world on your bike to discover something in your own country, which at the start you were saying is so small and so constricting, but to discover these new sites in your own country, that's awesome.
Yeah, that was very, very surprising, but also very, I was very happy to find that, to be there, to find this small place. I didn't know. It was very idyllic.
There were so many moments, landscape-wise, already. It's really hard to point with a finger. I must say, though, and yeah, we felt like this, like in Cappadocia, probably a lot of people have seen pictures of it, and it is kind of incredible, but it's also like extremely, extremely touristic and commercial. And that is for us, we found by now really challenging. And it started in Turkey, really, that we kind of we entered Turkey with a ferry from Greece and was really close to Ephesus. So it's UNESCO World Heritage, and it's mind-blowing. It definitely is. But there's so many tourists, and everything around us is so it's only about tourists. And I mean, understandably, I don't it's not that these are bad people. It's kind of obvious that it happens, but it's difficult for us because we are in the in-between most of the time. Like 99.9% of the time we are where no tourists are. And then when we come to these places that are world famous and people travel there from the other end of the world to see it, we understand because it's incredible human achievement, mind-blowing. But for us, we kind of started feeling in Turkey we don't really enjoy to go to these places.
Also, I think because we got used to this slow travel, enjoying everything consciously, taking our time, seeing it properly. And then when you are there, you see this, chaos of people moving a lot too fast. Everything is happening too fast. And for me personally, I'm a slow person. I do like to sit there for a long time, just to breathe and to see and to just get impressed by the place or by whatever I am seeing. And that was just too stressful for me. Because, at this hour you have to go out, and it's just, you also cannot sit somewhere and enjoy anything because it's just too many people. And so these big touristy attractions, are not in the concept of our travel. They don't fit in the concept of our travel.
Yeah, and we start to avoid them by now. And so when I think about the most beautiful places, yes, also definitely Scala dei Turci in Sicily. That was mind-blowing because it was, for us, it was the first sort of perfect place where we put our tent, where everything was more than perfect, better than we had imagined. And then we had a few more of those similar moments. But after then, it had always been in completely random places. I remember in Turkey I think it was in the first week where we went over this first mountain and camped randomly on top of the mountain, and there was nobody really around us, and it was this beautiful view, and we would cycle up this mountain road for the whole day with maybe 2 cars crossing us, This is to me, is the moments where I feel amazed by the beauty of the world, and when I feel all the freedom and peace that I ever felt in my life.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Well, I don't want to put thoughts in your mind, but from what you're sharing there, would it be right to say that for you both, you found more joy in the saying of, the road less travelled and away from people? Coming into cities was something that perhaps you didn't look forward to?
Me, absolutely. If I could, I would. I mean, this is the thing, at a certain point, it's kind of not avoidable anymore. In the beginning, in Europe, Central Europe, it's kind of, you can avoid most of the time. You can go around the big cities most of the time. The further we go to the east, let's look at Turkey, for instance. There's not so many roads. There will be just one road. If you don't take this road, you can make a 1,000 kilometer detour, basically. So there's just no other way. So you stop thinking over it because it's just I want to get to Armenia now. The border's closed, so we have to go to Georgia, and this is one road we have to take. But in the beginning, Turkey, I think we tried to avoid a lot of, for instance, we did not go to Izmir, which is a beautiful city, very open, progressive city on the sea. And I could see myself totally enjoying Izmir, but in this mode of travel with the bicycles and so on, I didn't, both of us didn't feel like we would enjoy it, so we didn't go.
But to answer your question again, I think I have this inner balance sometimes. Of course, it's better when you're cycling, it's better to cycle on roads where there is less traffic or not as many people. So big cities are stressful. That's true. But then again, sometimes I need this big city vibe, I need this chaos, and it's stressful, but then I leave that moment and I see, oh, okay, this is the city life here, and maybe there is some nice thing. And for example, in Turkey, we visited Konya. I've heard about this city only once, and I didn't know it's a 2 million city, actually pretty big. But when we went there, that was an opportunity for us to learn about a part of religion that I didn't know. And I learned about that, and I saw that right in the center of it. So I was very happy we went there.
It's interesting listening to you there, Arev. It's almost like the chaos of the city, you drew energy from that as well.
Yeah, of course.
You were uplifted from being in that chaotic environment of the hustle and the bustle and people all around. But conversely, you also enjoyed moments of solitude when you were on top of, say, that mountain in Turkey and you had the whole place to yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. So after the city, we go in the mountains and I'm like, oh, nice, we are alone again and it's silent again. But then, there is some balance.
You both took the decision that you were going to film this trip and document it, and I know through your YouTube channel you've posted the first few videos now of your journey. How has that been? Because, Mathias, you were saying at the start, neither of you are filmmakers. How have you found that side of things as your travels went on?
Well, to be honest, for the most part, I think we're the biggest part of it for us right now is the editing, and to an extent that we could not even imagine it. So we set out on this trip and we knew we wanted to document it, but we had no idea what we were doing. So we basically panicked all the time that we don't film the important moment. And a lot of the time we totally did not because we were too tired. But we filmed a lot of other stuff. And now for the last months that we are here in Armenia, we go through the painful process of trying to find the 1% of the footage that is really telling the story really that we had.
Can I say, as someone who's viewed all of your YouTube films, I really like them. I think you've managed to tell a story really well in each of your episodes. Like, there's a theme there. And it's interesting because as I see from when you set off in Germany to where they're up to now, I actually see how you're both sort of progressing into that cycle to a mindset. And I love that you blend it in with a bit of humour as well. So do what you keep doing. Like, I think they're great.
Yeah, thank you. In the beginning, filming was my passion. I wanted to make films and videos, and that's why this idea came at all. But then I made some short movies, but not under these conditions, when there is this never-ending, ongoing story. And then you should, find the energy to film it. You are totally exhausted. You are two people. You have to discuss everything. I think most of our fights were also because of this. Yeah, it's just too stressful, because, in the beginning we had to learn the cycling process, the life to integrate into this new life. But then we also film it. Okay, how do you film it? I'm exhausted. I don't want the camera. I'm sad or I'm angry, whatever, how I'm going to take the camera. And okay, I'm angry, but let's film that.
And actually,
this doesn't work.
You've seen this one occasion because I tried it. Actually, I tried before filming a fight. But as you might imagine, that did not
end well. Because at some
point... You might need the GoPro on stealth mode there.
I mean, you saw that one scene, like in the second France video, where it was very tense moment. It was by far not.
It was.
It was by far not the
tense moment.
It was a very mild fight, actually, but it was the only one we have on record. And I put the camera because my camera was on top of the helmet, so I put it on because I knew something was going to happen.
And I didn't know he was
Alf
filming.
did not notice it until like 10 minutes of us fighting there. And obviously, in the video, you only get to see like the first, 10, 15 seconds because it's in German and it's pointless anyways. Like, we couldn't tell you even now what was it about.
It's good to be able to laugh about it now. And notwithstanding the massive amount of editing that's involved going through this, because let's face it takes a massive amount of energy to actually get where you are now through pedal power. There's so much that goes beyond documenting a journey that size. You can't. It's impossible to document it all. But I do feel that complexity aside, you will be glad to be able to reflect back on all of this, and that you have.
Absolutely. And it's an insane ride right now. I mean, obviously it's really difficult, a difficult process for us, but now already, I mean, we're reflecting so much more now because of it, because we have to relive it very intensely to be able to tell a story about what happened.
Yeah, I remember when we were editing Germany videos, I was like, Mathias, Germany is so nice. We've cycled there. Germany is so beautiful. I just remembered that.
Yeah, I know. I was there, remember? Oh, what a funny moment. Just speaking about this, I normally ask right at the end, but I'll ask now that we have an opportunity. For people who do want to follow along with your adventures and see these films you're making, how can they find them?
Well, on YouTube. So right now we're really focusing on that. It's for us the most important part to tell the story in moving pictures. And you can find us at Amazing World Bike Tour on YouTube.
Fantastic. And do you have any other social media accounts that people should be keeping track of?
Yeah, we have Instagram, Facebook, but we are active on YouTube currently.
Okay, fantastic. And for our listeners, I will provide links to keep track of Arev and Mathias and on their adventures. So you're in Armenia now. It's not quite all the way around the world. Would I say you're sort of at a stop on the tour? What's next for you both?
Well, that's our question as well.
It's not 100% clear today, but further to the east, that's for sure.
So the next stop is Central Asia, but we don't know how. If Iran, if the situation in Iran gets better, we will cycle through Iran, which was initially our plan. But if it doesn't get better, then maybe unfortunately we'll have to fly to Kazakhstan.
Yeah, so we were checking our options basically, and when we first started thinking about all this, the world was a very much easier place for doing something like this, because at that time it was absolutely no problem to take several different routes to go from Germany to South Korea, which is our main goal. And right now, there's actually no way to do that by land, except from technically we could go all the way through Russia, which is nothing we would feel comfortable
At
now
the
with
moment.
what's going on. And so, yes, it's really difficult. It looks like right now that Turkmenistan is very difficult to get transit visa either. So while it's technically possible right now to get a visa for Iran and cross Iran, and it is possible, but especially for us, that filming is a big part, it's not a good time. Because many people can get problems because of it. Not even us, especially, not so much us, but all Iranian people that would interact with us risk problems.
Yeah, and you would shoulder that responsibility for them, absolutely, I could imagine. Hard decisions to make.
And China has also the land borders closed.
But they don't even give tourist visas still. They started to give special visas for business and stuff, but tourist visas they still don't give. And even it looks like if they would start giving tourist visas again this year, it's very likely that you can only apply for them in the embassy in your home country and not from the road, because they don't want you to cross any land borders because of situations in like Xinjiang and Tibet. So right now it's really difficult, and the most likely option is that we, as I just said, we take the shortest flight from here to get over the Caspian Sea to Kazakhstan, and then from there we could continue about 1,500 kilometers through the desert in Uzbekistan, the old Silk Road trail, which is beautiful and very interesting. And then we hope to be able to do this summer the Kyrgyzstan, the Pamirs, Tajikistan, like all these longing places for many, many bike packers and bike tourers from the world. So we hope that this is going to work out, and then we'll see from that. I think if we learn one thing by now, really, is don't plan too much ahead, because it's will only end in disappointment.
Let's just all hope that the way is forward and the solutions that you're seeking will come your way so this amazing trip of yours can continue. I always like to finish my podcast asking my guests 2 simple questions, so I'll ask them for you each. First one is, if you had the choice of having to cycle constantly uphill or into a constant headwind, which one would you choose? Arev, you go first.
Uphill. I would choose uphill.
Yeah, very easy answer. Definitely uphill. Definitely. I mean, and I hate to be. I must. I started this trip like at least 10, if not 15 kilograms over my ideal weight, and we were both, especially me, very unfit. So I struggle horribly, and any type of inclination can be 3%. I'm struggling already. So I really not the big fan of the climbing itself, but in a way I still like it, because at the end of the day, like you get to the top, you get to ride down again. It's amazing. It's a sense of achievement and everything. Like it gives you so much, right? And a headwind is just annoying. You get nothing.
I know. Yeah. Inner strength.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I will remember that.
Well, actually, you know what? Take a tip from one of my guests, Dr. Florence Cattell, who's a neuroscientist. She's one of the few people that have chosen the wind, and her reasoning is that you constantly feel the wind on your skin and on your face, and it's a reminder that you're alive. So maybe try and take that positive mind shift the next time you're pedaling into a headwind.
Maybe it depends on how strong is the headwind.
No. We need this is really good. Like, I'm really happy. Like, we need to remember this.
So, okay, my last question, and this will be an interesting one because I know you're obviously cycle touring as a couple, but if you each had the choice that you could cycle for 4 hours on your own or 4 hours with other people, which one would you want to choose? And when I mean on your own, I don't mean on your own as the two of you. I mean totally on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to cycle for 4 hours on my own.
I think me too. But it's a difficult one because, I mean, obviously we met a lot of cycle tourists so far on our road, and we had also these moments where we are really happy to meet them. I mean, actually all the time we meet other cyclists on the road, we are like super excited. But we also made the experience, while it's great to have them around, and usually most other cycle tourists are also really nice people, and it's really easy to connect because you have so much similarities and so on. But especially in the beginning, it was like our first experience where we were so happy to meet them. It was still also very challenging because we had just figured out how we together function as a team on the road without killing each other every other day. And then you're with these other people and they have it figured out for themselves, but in a completely different way. So it's basically starting over in a way. So, and I think this is why I would say yes. I mean, and I didn't even have the experience. I've never cycled for 4 hours straight just by myself. So I would definitely say cycling for 4 hours.
Yeah, that would be interesting for us.
I think all answers are the right answers. It's amazing because on balance, I can say now, so far, most of my guests have always said they would prefer to be on their own, which is interesting. And it's more about what that time on their own helps them to do and clears their mind, solves their problems, time to themselves. It's very interesting. So, yeah. But, Arev and Mathias, I would love to speak with you both for hours. Like, your adventure is enthralling. I've really enjoyed following along with it and watching your YouTube series. So I have subscribed and I ask all my guests to subscribe and watch this adventure continue on. I hope the way is forward for you both. Thank you so much for allowing me to listen to and share your story. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was also a very pleasant conversation with you.
Absolutely. It was a great possibility to reflect, and obviously one can tell that you talked to quite some other cyclists as well because you really have amazing questions. So thank you very much for having us.
Wow, what an adventure Arev and Mathias have embarked on. And they're only just getting started, really. I got in touch with them just quickly before I released this episode, and I'm happy to give you an update on their trip. They have just received their visas and are headed for the Iranian border, so they've left Armenia behind and are continuing on with their trip. Now, if you're really enjoying the podcast, please do me a favour. Go into your podcast player app and please give the show a rating and a review and let me know exactly what you think. Each week I'm getting messages from my listeners and it really fills me joy when I see them come through, just letting me know that they're listening to the show and they're enjoying hearing the adventures and stories and experiences of my guest. It really motivates me to keep doing this and keep interviewing more people, and I really, really love being able to do that and bring a show like this to you. And if you want to discuss the show a bit more with me, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. You can head over to Reddit. We have our own community up there. It's called the Seek Travel Ride Podcast. So if you do a search for Seek Travel Ride Podcast on Reddit, you will find our community. Join in there and you can chat to me about each episode that's released. The other way to get in touch is to send me an email, and you can do that if you want to just discuss an episode, or alternatively, if you yourself feel that you have undertaken a bicycle adventure that you'd like to share with our listeners. That email is podcast@seektravelride.com. Just send me an email and request to be interviewed as a guest for the show. Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening.